Good day, everyone. Actually, good morning. How are you guys doing? It's 21 minutes past the hour here in Guyana. That's 11:21. Okay, this is Papa Snow coming to you live out of Guyana. Now, today I'm going to continue the story of the Devil's Attorney. Okay, and for those of you who are now tuning in, okay, we do have part 1 of this story up on YouTube, right? So if you wanted to follow along and move with the storyline, you can always visit our YouTube channel and you could see part 1 to this. Okay, now last time we were discussing this story. By the way, good day everyone once again. Last time we were dealing with this story, we left off at David and Bathsheba's story. Okay, for those of you who don't understand what it is that I'm really talking about, let me explain it, right? Just to make sure that we're all on the same page. Okay, now a couple days ago, humorously speaking, of course, okay, I was approached by the devil. Okay, and hilariously speaking. Okay, so please don't take me like 100% before you think that I'm some type of devil worshiper or something like that, because people would always try to spin things around. Okay, but it is very important to put it out there, especially when we deal with things like truth. Okay, truth is the enemy of all types of bullshit stories, right? That that come out there. And this here is meant to make you ask some questions. Okay, so while I'm doing this story, the story is meant to make you question a lot of things. I think questioning is important. You're not going to learn unless you ask questions. You're not going to find out the truth unless you ask questions. You can't just take everything that you hear and say, okay, good, this is a fact. Right? So earlier this week, right, as the story goes, I was approached by the devil, and the devil needs an attorney. Right? The devil's argument is simple. He says, man, throughout the beginning of history, he has always been blamed for everything bad. Makes sense. The devil made me do it, right? As the story goes. But in part 1, the devil would have started to plead his case to me to see if I'm going to take the case. Because at the end of the day, he's looking for somebody honest for, to represent the matter. Because not just because society labels him as bad means that he is actually bad. How many of us actually know the devil? And at the same time, it makes you wonder who really is the devil in this whole story that is currently being laid out. Okay? So we would have went over Adam and Eve. We would have went over a whole bunch of stories leading up to David and Bathsheba. Okay? And once again, the devil's argument is simple. He says he is a spiritual being. He has no hands. He has no mouth. He can't physically touch you. Can't do anything to you physically. Right? But yet, he has been blamed as the source of all of humanity's evilness and wickedness. Well, the devil is here to refute that claim. But he says he cannot refute that claim unless the justice system that he's going into is a fair justice system. So this is where he has a problem, because he knows the justice system ain't fair. Right? So he chooses now to come and to state his piece. Alright, so last time now, continuing with the story, we would have left off at David and Bathsheba and the story of Uriah. Right? The devil would have let us know that Bathsheba was the first official Instagram and Facebook model. Why did he lead us to believe this? Or why did he state this? Why did the devil make this statement? And it was simple. The devil said, Bathsheba knew she was a beautiful woman. She knew she was a married woman. But yet she chose to go on top of a rooftop and bathe naked where King David and other people could see she. Right? So the sin of David causing her husband to die was not just a sin on David's part, it was also a sin on Bathsheba's part. Because the reality is, the devil's saying, she knew she was a married woman. What type of married woman would advertise herself and she whole body and everything she considered beautiful on top of a rooftop, naked, so other people could see she bathing? Splash, splash, right? So Bathsheba had intention, right? This is what the devil is saying. He's saying it wasn't just David. David is a man just like any man, right? He's prone to nature. He's prone to, being a man. And if a sexy naked woman come and jump in front of you, advertising to you all she goodies and all she snacks, there's a high probability that somebody will want to sample the goodies and sample the snacks that Bathsheba had to offer. Right? Yes, Wendy, that is absolutely true. Many married women do that in this day and age. And I think that a lot of people would understand when they listen to the devil's side of the story that there's a lot to learn from this particular stream. But we really have to focus it on absolute truth. Right? On absolute truth is something that we have to focus in on. Right? And this is very, very important for the way we live our lives today. Especially those of us who like to say, is the devil make me do it? Right? So, like I said, the devil is here to refute those claims today. And he's here to bring a little clarity. Right? Unfortunately for me, he chose to talk to me. So, all I can do is put it out there and at least allow the man's side of the story to be said. Because at the end of the day, every man has the right to face his accuser. So I find it very contradicting that people would blame things that realistically may never have had any actual intervention in their personal life or personal decisions, which is free will, and that was explained in part 1. Free will is something that we all have. Angels have it, animals have it, human beings have it. All of God's creations have a sense of free will, right? All of God's living creations have a sense of free will, whether we know it, whether we like it, whether we don't. This is reality. We are all allowed to make a decision. Even a dog can pick who his master is through loyalty and behavior. Listen to that one very carefully. Even a dog that got less sense than we human beings can pick his master based on loyalty and behavior. Okay? And what that means, ladies and gentlemen, is very, very simple. You shall reap what you sow. Okay? And the devil is saying he has nothing to do with the consequences of human beings and their foolish decisions. He done explain thing with Adam and Eve and the snake and how we get bad name for dog. How Adam get jealous and walk out the garden and just say forget it because he ain't want the woman around the snake no more. A lot of story. Right? He even asked the question how Cain gone into the wilderness and start the whole civilization. Went through Noah day and everything. The man stated clear. If the whole earth be wiped out by a flood and it was only Noah and his family, and Noah and his family repopulate the earth and then all of these kingdoms start fighting with one another, is it not Noah's own family fighting against Noah's own family based on what we have available to us as written history? Right? So he was explaining all of these things to us. And the man makes sense. The man makes sense. Because if we are part of one family, how come we killing each other for house and land? It sound more like, it sound more like a normal scenario where people killing each other for house, land, and property, right? So there's a lot of things there that were mentioned that I think, in my particular opinion, it relates a lot to our current day lifestyle and living. So we shall continue our story here. So we left off at David and Bathsheba. Bathsheba was bathing on the rooftop. She makes sure she do it clearly in David's sight so he can see all the goodies and snacks and things and get hungry, right? So David, being a king, able to get a little bit of what he want all the time, he don't know the woman approaching he. And plenty women might say, and plenty people, no, Bathsheba never approached David. I don't know about you, but I's a man. If you come and you start showing me all you snacks, well, I don't know what you call that. You either marketing, you're advertising, or you want somebody to come in your store and pick up some goods. So David, as any other man, especially a king at that time, he knew he could afford the goods. So David sent his people, and of course, poor Uriah busy fighting war for David. He's like soldier. The general send the soldier out. While the soldier out there, the general hustling the man's wife. Right? And it become this love triangle. Now remember, at this particular point in time, okay, David was a chosen representative of God. He was one of God's main representatives on earth. He was an anointed, he was anointed to be king from his lineage, right? The Messiah would be born, and all of these magnificent things would have happened through David's bloodline, right? So the devil says, he says somehow he was blamed for the wicked intention of the woman. Somehow he was blamed for the wicked actions of the man. And he found this to be grossly unfair as well. He said, listen, I did not influence David. David was already wicked. And I said, man, how can you say David was already wicked? David was the anointed. He said, if David was truly anointed, why would David need a whole bunch of women? Why David couldn't find one good woman and build a kingdom from there? Surely the anointed would have a certain degree of divine wisdom for being the anointed. I said, yeah, maybe. Shit, sounds valid to me. If you're anointed, you should have some degree of common sense, right? So I talking, listening to you too, and the man said, well, it come back down to the same Adam and Eve story. Adam was created perfect. Eve gone and played games with the snake, and from there, he get blamed. He said he couldn't even, why would he turn himself into a snake? That's the first thing the man said. I said, but there's another snake and ladder story coming here. So, he back away a little bit, he taking a little bit of the bad name, but he said, even if you read the story, I was still nowhere wrong in the story. He said, I wasn't there. He said, I was still in heaven at that time trying to figure out how not to get evicted. Because they had some type of game going on against you. From the start, they had a game going on against you. And every time he talk, they say, you know what, you're going against God. But the man is saying, I didn't go against God. I just keep reminding God that he keeps making stupid decisions. So I said, man, why you keep saying God making stupid decisions? He said, all right. He said, all right, Anthony. You believe in God, right? I said, yeah, of course I believe in God. That's how come I know there's a devil and you're sitting in front of me. The man said, valid point. I said, good. So where are you getting at? He said, well, your God is all-knowing. I said, yeah. He says, your God is infinite. I say, yeah. There's nothing that your God cannot foresee or not know what's going to happen and all of this other stuff. I said, yeah. And then he came with a very valid question. He said, well, then why anoint David knowing that David would eventually commit adultery and cause a man to lose his life who was a faithful and loyal servant, and his name was Uriah? He said, didn't God see that one coming? If he was all-knowing, didn't he see that one coming? He said once again, he said same story with Adam and Eve. God knew he left the woman naked running inside the garden, and he put a big fat anaconda for go wrap around her leg. What did you think would happen, Mr. Snow? What did you think would happen? Now we go and anoint another one. He anointed Saul. Saul became king. Saul had jealousy, envy, and all this stuff. He ended up attacking David, the anointed. David had to run and go live with the enemy and come back. Now, David is anointed, and David chose now to commit adultery and send Uriah to his death. Same time, the woman laughing and smiling all the time, kissing up her husband, knows she done pregnant with the next man. Probably go and sleep with the man a couple times and come back with refurbished catty to David, right? Because, you know, in Guyana, we got refurbished vehicle. So Bathsheba came with, you know, refurbished catty. And this is what the devil said, not me. He said, thing they refurbished. She had a nice paint job, everything looking good, but it was a refurbished vehicle. And David chose to accept the refurbished vehicle. Now, all of us know, and this is what the man saying. Man said, all of us know when you buy used thing just come with problem. It look good, but when you start drive the car, it start broke down and thing, and that's where you just find your real expense. And he says, so let me proceed by telling you how this used vehicle, right, end up becoming very unreliable on the road. He said, well, David want to pack his first load in it, right? So he pack his first load in it, and Bathsheba get pregnant. David sent out poor Uriah. Uriah dead on battlefield, rest his soul. He dead and gone, he stupid, he bad, right? He didn't understand is what he pick up, right? Now, the first load, David tried to move with this refurbished catty, right? The load didn't get where it going. As soon as he put load in the vehicle start broke down and thing. The woman gets sick. The baby born sick. David now holding his head and crying all the time. Oh God, is what gonna happen here? So, the devil says, well, nobody ever write the next piece. Right? So nobody ever write the next piece. The devil said, well, God approached him. God said, boy, you gotta go and tell you the bad news now. And the devil and God had their own little talk there. And he said, man, I ain't going to tell you the bad news. You gotta send somebody else to tell you the bad news. But David had a man inside the kingdom. Right? One of God's chosen people that God chose to send to David to counsel David. When David talking to the man for counsel, the man come to the king in a smarty way. Don't quote me on this one, right? But he said, Your Majesty, Sire, whatever he called David, your royal adulterer, whatever it was that he really called David, right? He said, sir, we got the problem. David said, what's the problem? He said, man, I need your opinion on something. He said, what's that? He said, I know a poor man with a goat, and I know a rich man with plenty goat. And before the rich man use any one of he goat, he go and he take the goat, the one goat from the poor man. He slaughter the goat. And then he gone and he kill the man who owned the one goat. So David thinking the stories about goat all the time, ain't realize the stories about cat yet, right? So David sit there and David said, what? There's a wicked man, boy. Who could do something like that, boy? The man ain't got sense. The man got plenty and still going after the other man one thing. David getting on, David get vex. David like, you know what, we gotta kill this bastard, boy. This man ain't got no discipline. We gotta do something about this. The devil said this time, he in the background laughing because remember, he can't intervene. He didn't intervene before and he get bad names. So he can't even go and tell stupid David that the story is about he. And finally the prophet tell David, yo, it's about you, you know. Then David said, oh, scunt by, you know what? You're telling the truth. It is about me. Oh, God, is what I gonna do now. It's what I gonna do now. I don't say this wicked man gotta get killed, but I can't kill myself. I don't say this wicked man has committed an atrocious sin, but I can't punish myself because I am the anointed. So all the time now, the devil laughing in the background. He said, but I laughing. I ain't know how far this thing gonna go, but I been laughing all the time because I see what they're doing to themselves. So lo and behold now, he said the same loving God that all we support cursed David and Bathsheba, which is why the Lord couldn't make it to the destination, which is why the baby gets sick, all type of headache happened, and the baby was destined to die. Right? In fact, it's stated that, in the Bible, it's stated that David mourned from the moment that child was born. And he only stopped mourning when that child was dead. Then the devil says, here's the truth about that one though, Mr. Snow. Because they don't put it in the Bible for anybody to know. Right? I said, Bible, tell me this truth. I'm interested in hearing this truth that you gotta tell me. He said, look, man, what I'm about to tell you here, plenty people ain't gonna want to believe. But if you study human nature, you're gonna realize how humans are. I've been around from the beginning, so I could tell you. I said, okay, I'm listening all the time. So tell me what really happened. He said, well, the baby wasn't really sick. I said, eh? So what you mean the baby wasn't sick? He said, you ain't understand. He said, when David, the loading up the catty, Uriah still had load inside the trunk. I said, huh? He said, yeah. Because when the refurbished vehicle they move in, at some point in time it become a taxi. So more than one man take a ride in this vehicle at the same time. He says, so the truth of the story is, that child did not die because the child was sick. That child died because David felt it could have possibly been Uriah's child. I said, what? He said, look at the timeline. When Bathsheba was pregnant, there was no way for her to tell Uriah that she didn't know who the daddy was. She couldn't tell she knew sweet man that she was still sleeping with your old man. But David had sense to know that when Uriah came back, Uriah went home to his wife for a brief moment. And all it is take is 5 minutes, 10 minutes of joking for load up the trunk. He said, so after Uriah dead, David couldn't stand the chance that maybe the kid could have been Uriah's kid and come up and dethrone him and broke out his anointed legacy and story done. So the way the story goes, he said nobody couldn't see because the king had absolute rule at that time. So nobody couldn't tell the devastation that was done. I said, boy, there's a real stiff way for look at it, boy. He said, but it is not outside the realm of possibility. He said, remember, Anthony, it's Cathy you're dealing with. Even lion, when a new lion take over, a pride that is go and hunt out the younger ones and kill it. Well, David was the lion of Jerusalem. I said, oh, Scott, you're making sense now. He said, Mr. Snow, plenty true thing that's talk and joke, but people don't want to listen to me because they call me the devil. I said, bye. Yeah, watch this thing carefully now. I said, all right, all right. I'm listening to you side all the time, Mr. Satan, and listening. You're making some valid points here, boy. He said, because at the end of the day, the king controlled everything. So how did you know? He said, how a perfectly healthy woman and a perfectly healthy king produce a sick offspring. He said, but the story is that God cursed him. So if God cursed him, why God killed the child? Did God curse the child? Or did God not value the life of the child? He said something is wrong if you feel that God can take the life of a child. That's not the God that created us. He says something wrong with the history. Somebody hiding something. So then I thought about it. He said, Mr. Snow, has anyone ever lied upon you and created a story and a narrative? And a lot of people believe it because they were the only voice that people were hearing at the time. I said, you're making more and more sense, more and more sense. I did a court story right now that seemed like a very one-sided approach. They only want to listen to one side. They may want to listen to both sides. How could I ever get justice? So I said, devil, you're making sense here, Keep going, keep talking. And me, you got to make a little bit more sense before I take this case. Man said, well, I'll continue. He said the wickedness that was within David, he get blamed for, like he started. He said he ain't never tell God forgive a man lowly, nor did he tell Bathsheba for go and flash a catty. But somehow he get blamed for the wickedness. He said, but we're going to keep going. Now God, as the story goes, right, cursed David. Because David had to go for redemption now. And David's curse went very, very far. In fact, David had many other children. And the wickedness that fell upon his lineage traveled through the line of his children. Not all, but we're going to talk about some. One of the first things that we will talk about that came as a curse to David was the story of Amnon, who fell in love with his sister Tamar. Do you guys remember the story? You may never hear it like you're hearing it now today. Right? So the devil said, David wasn't as clean as everybody think David was clean. David was a killer. David was plenty thing and he become a king. But he said David was a very lawless man. And he says his lawlessness ended up shining through most of his children. He said, all right, keep talking. He said, Amnon ended up taking his sister, which means David's son, take David's daughter. And he said he raped her and shamed her. And he wanted her for himself. And he tried to hold her captive in a sexually violent, abusive, narcissistic relationship. Incestuous at the same time. He said it got so bad that David had a son, Absalom, had to save his sister and hide his sister from the other brother who was ravaging her, raping her, and treated she like a slut. So Absalom had to draw back and protect his sister. Absalom, as a result of David not addressing the matter with Amnon and his daughter, Absalom grew to start to hate his father. For the wickedness that his father allowed to happen within their house and within their kingdom. So Absalom started hating his family. And he started to hate it because of what was happening. As the story goes, David ended up losing many children. And many of his children ended up not achieving major things in their life. Knocking about. Basically behaving very much like the children of the rich and famous right now, or the powerful who believe that they have authority and leverage over all human beings around them because they are powerful or they have been blessed a little bit more. He said, so Mr. Snow, everything that happened there, that wasn't even a curse from God. So David said it's a curse from God. But that was a curse that David called upon himself through free will. David gets so bold as to blame God for the cost to kill the child. He said something wrong there. And when they couldn't blame God or they couldn't blame me, they fight up with each other and find somebody else to blame. He said this is the nature of humanity. That you human beings are pretty screwed up. And once another human being willing to listen to skunt, you can tell them any skunt to make them believe you. And they're so stupid, they believe it. Right? So I said, alright. I said, so what happened next? Let's go a little bit. I said, tell me a little bit about this guy Solomon. He said, oh, Solomon. He said, you know what? Solomon was one of my favorite people. I said, why do you say that? He said, because Solomon gained wisdom. And he started to rectify certain things. But he was also the wisest. And the reason why Solomon was called the wisest is not because he was the smartest. I said, what do you mean? He said he knew how to cover up his father's sins so nicely that after his reign, nobody even looking back at the father. I said, eh? I said, explain. He said, well, Solomon, first thing he did is, you know they like their faith, he rebuilt the biggest temple that you could think about. The most glorious thing that you could think about, he built it back. He built it better. He built it stronger. Solomon also knew how to speak to people. And he was a real ladies' man. He never had to watch another woman, man. He was good looking. He was smart. He was rich and he was a king. The boy come with all the big boy ties. And good swear in the mouth. I said, what? He said, Mr. Snow, you know what type of a gaff man you gotta be to be in Israel and make the Queen of Sheba travel God know how long for come and see you? He said Solomon was also smart enough too to breed interracially. So what you telling me? He's like, when the Queen of Sheba go there, is what the woman go for see the man for? She couldn't have sent an envoy. She went for a personal visit. Because she don't know like father, like son. He's anointed too. So she will be blessed by the visit. Right? So I said, boy, this is a serious thing. He said, no, Solomon had a serious thing. That's how come everybody they going to see. How you feel? Solomon end up with many wives. Because he was a king that truly ruled with a scepter. And the man knew how to do his thing. I said, all right, smart man there. Solomon was the wisest man, they say. Right? So I keep listening to this. He said, but eventually, with all that wisdom and sense Solomon had, Solomon eventually created his own downfall. I said, why you say that? He said, because Solomon continued to rule with his scepter and not with his brain. I said, explain by explain. He said Solomon ended up losing favor because he liked women bad. He ended up picking up a start to woman. Remember I was telling you earlier about the refurbished catty? Well, like when he get older, all the wisdom start disappearing. And then he started pick up a set of refurbished catty. Right? You know, not like models that are like 3 years or less, but like models that are like 20 years old and thing, you know, models with real problem. Right? So he pick up all them thing them, and all them thing them come with its own problem. Then he decided he could try to keep them happy. Because he got too much of them around now, too much headache, you know. For a wise man, he sure picked a problem that was hard to avoid. Which man wise and want more than one woman? There's no such thing as a wise man that want more than one woman. The devil telling me this all the time. He said one woman and a snake bring down the whole of humanity. Why would you want 10, 15, 20, 30 women? How many species do you have that you are willing to sacrifice? I said, bye. I know if I answer no one. But I'm listening nonetheless. Right? He said he pick up all the prettiest ones. He pick up all the youngest ones. He pick up all the ones that didn't have sense. Because it's only a woman who ain't got much sense gonna want to deal with a man who got 1,000 freaking wife. He says, so at the end of it, with all that wisdom Solomon had, Solomon become a paku. I said, bye. Satan, how you know what's paku? He said, I created the term and then they put it to a fish. But it wasn't fish I was talking about. It was a different type of fish I was talking about. And they just attributed it to the wrong type of fish. He said, the man get paku. And become a paku. I said, whoa. That's harsh, by you call it Solomon a paku. He said, but Solomon had to be a paku. I said, why? He said, because with all the sense and all, he still didn't see the folly of his ways. Right? He said he was a paku. I said, okay. I said, but Solomon wrote many wise things. Devil said, yeah. He said, but water could be ice. Water could be in the ocean and water could be raindrop. It's all water, but they all got different purpose. He just chose to exercise he think from a different angle and become the paku. After that, Solomon allowed idolatry. He allowed different faith-based systems. He allowed his wives to worship what they wanted to worship as opposed to worshiping the God that pretty much gave him the wisdom. and kept him as a king successful. So eventually Solomon's whole belief system and everything started getting crashed down because of his own actions. He said, once again though, they come and they start blaming me, Mr. Snow. I said, what do you mean? They said, man, why is it that the women them had idolatry and it was always the women them and they bringing in this, and nobody ever think to the fact to say that Solomon himself allowed it, encouraged it, welcomed it into his house, did all of these things. And he said, listen, Mr. Snow, if a king got how much thousands of wives, back then they didn't have birth control. I said, nah, not to my knowledge. He said, how come you don't hear about the children with all of these wives? You only hearing about one or two. I said, that's a good question, you know. Same thing with David. We only heard something about David and plenty children and up, but so only Solomon really make it true. So for real, how come if a man got thousands of wives and this, how come the man only, you know, they only mention a handful of children? He said, don't you see, history has been written as a lie? Because if he's a king and he's sleeping with all of these women and he is blessed by God, would their bellies not be blessed too? It's a good point. Good point. One joke up, load in the trunk. Good point, Mr. Satan. Good point. He says, so watch how unfair they write this history. They talk about none of Solomon had a children them. They only talk about the handful that they want you to focus on. Nothing else. I said, okay. He said, afterwards, the way everything played out, the whole nation of Israel started to fall apart. And suddenly, Solomon starts to repent. And Solomon has to prove his wisdom now. And in the process of proving his wisdom, hence the book of Ecclesiastes, the book of Proverbs come, and the book of Psalms. It all start come. Because he said those things were written when Solomon was trying to find out is what's going to do wrong. And he still failed to identify his biggest problems until he got to Proverbs 31, where he described what a good wife is. And then Solomon realized the folly of his ways. He didn't need 100. He didn't need 1,000. He screwed up because all he needed was one. And because he did not exercise that aspect of wisdom, it became one of the last verses and I believe one of the last chapters in Proverbs. 31 is pretty much out there. Right? For those of you who don't know about what the qualities, in terms of the Bible, what it lays out, you can visit Proverbs. And it will explain the qualities of a good wife. There was a reason why there's a reason why Solomon wrote that. Because it was his soul searching at that time. He said during that time when Solomon in all of his wisdom decided to find his wrong within himself was when some of the greatest books in the Bible were ever written. Solomon had all of that wisdom because he had experienced failure time and time and time and time again. Which is how you gain wisdom. You gain wisdom through experience. It is not magically inclined into your brain. It is not put there. You gain wisdom through experience. He said, and that is why I've come to you, Mr. Snow. Because you have experienced many things. And you may understand what it is that I'm explaining here today. I said, all right. I said, let's keep going. Well, you know, after Solomon's reign, the whole kingdom of Israel started to get divided up. Why do you think there was all of that dividing, right? Why do you think throughout that time the Israelites ended up having a civil war with Jeroboam? All sorts of things were happening. Prophecies, everything else started getting fulfilled. All the way until we come up to the story of Elijah. He said, I gotta skip through that because it's peer retirement, you know, peer retirement. I said, what do you mean peer retirement? The peer retirement all the way through. You ain't understand. Everything Solomon he touched with his extension and all them used vehicle he pick up. That's what split up the kingdom. Because what people didn't realize is all of Solomon's kids were princes and princess. And when you raise all your children for know them as prince and princess and this and that and this and that, you created monster. He said so, as Solomon did, is everybody and everything start rush for power. The whole kingdom was divided. The people didn't know who to look at, who not to look at. Remember, at the same time, Solomon was a blow pickney. Blow pickney. I say that for a reason. Because if Bathsheba didn't originally give blow to Uriah, Solomon would have never come about. So he's a product of blow. Right? I said, oh, Scott, by devil making too much sense here, by this thing sounding more like reality than Bible story. No. Anyway, so we gone. We jumping into the story now with Elijah. The devil said, I used to be scared of that one. I said, what do you mean? He said, I used to be scared of that one. Because that one was more dangerous than David, than Solomon, than all of them. I said, why? He said, because Elijah came forth at a time when everything was in confusion and chaos. Elijah had to stand against the very same people that he was helping. He was not allowed to destroy them, for his job was to save them, even though destroying would have been easy. He could have called down a fire and burned up all of them. But at the same time, he exercised mercy and faith in God. He said, so I got nervous there because God hasn't been making some good decisions lately. I'm telling God, yo, you giving this man the ability to throw fire, I believe he brought a child back, all sorts of stuff. He's like, yo, the man had ranks. He said, but I didn't have much to fear from Elijah after Elijah started speaking the truth. I said, why? He said, because the stupidest thing that Elijah could have ever did was go and tell people the truth. I said, bye, you know what? You're making good sense there, Scott. He said, you ain't see what happened when Elijah started talking truth? It's everybody in the mother king, everybody, Queen Jezebel, everybody getting vexed with thee. Elijah had to run, hide, chase, get legs, do every single thing. He had to stay up on the move. He became an outlaw, vigilante. I said, I said, boy, what you talking about? And the devil shouted to me, mud water. I said, what do you mean mud water? He said, Papa Snow. I said, what do you mean, Papa Snow? He said, y'all talking truth. Scott will be society's enemy. He said, but don't worry, I'm right there with you. I said, oh, Scott, boy, what you telling me, boy? I says, what you telling me here? He said, don't you see, Mr. Snow? Everybody in history to come for talk truth, they murder us, lock us up, torment us, punish us. They use the system against us, a system that they somehow say belongs to me, but I have no say. How can I own it? What the I want to own that shit for? It's nothing but headache. I said, bye. This ain't making good sense. So keep that. He said the only person that could own them people safely is God. I said, why you say that? He said, man, because God is all powerful. And them is all stupidity. And the only one that could change their mind and go against free will is God. I can't even go against it. I am here of my own free will telling you the story, Mr. Snow. So I can't go against free will at all. He said, but all the time, anybody that come to speak truth shall and will be attacked. That is the nature of humanity. And then when they kill you, get rid of you, they're going to write their own version of history. Up to this day, I'm still being called a snake, Mr. Snow. They still calling me a snake. Me ain't even got a body, but they calling me a snake. I ain't tell the woman love up with the snake, you know. First mistake. I said, bye. I said, bye, you're making good sense. So I said, all right. Let me see what's going on here. He said, so I got nervous with Elijah until Elijah started talking the truth. Well, I know from watching all the time, David didn't like the truth. You know, Adam didn't like the truth. Pharaoh didn't like the truth when Moses tell you the truth. Nobody don't like the truth. David hide the truth. Solomon tried to outsmart you with the wisdom to blind you from the truth. He said that all of this is happening. Remember, guys, this is not my point of view, okay? This is the devil's point of view. I'm just listening to his story and asking you if you feel that this man deserves his fair day in court, okay? Because everybody has the right to face their accuser, right? I think that's very, very important. So he said, bye, watch how everything happened. He said Elijah was blessed by God to carry out some work. He said, and he remained faithful. That is what made me nervous about the man. Because in the face of all the controversy, all the naysayers, all the negative attacks, all the soldiers coming for killing, when Jezebel sending people to take off his head and do all of this, why the king sitting back and saying, it's okay, baby, you go ahead and kill the man that God said. It's alright. I can blame you for it later. We can execute your family and thing and just wipe you off, right? The king was allowing it until the end of his kingship. Until the end of his kingship. Even when Jezebel fell out of the window and the dogs eat you up. Right? Good. That's proof alone that they had problems with strays back then, by the way. Back then they had a lot of strays. To have that many dogs out there to eat up an ugly woman who fell up on your face, right? One, they have to have a lot of strays. It's a very dangerous time. Probably a lot of rabies out there. You don't know, leptospirosis, you know, chikungunya, all that other shit might have been there, right? But he said he was a devil, so he didn't have to worry. He was just enjoying the show. So I said, all right. good to go. But he said what made him scared about Elijah was that Elijah did not compromise his faith. And then he dropped ahead to say, I have not seen another one like that until he come into Jesus Christ, and we're going to get to the story as we hit the New Testament. I said, how far along is that? He said, like another 2 days, 3 days from now. We still got a lot more for talk about, Mr. Snow. So I said, oh, scoots, we got to keep going. He said, I can tell you a story now, a piece of this thing, about somebody that I found to be really, really cool, but he was a little misplaced. But he come and he do his part. I said, who's that you talking about now, man? Who you going to talk about now? What part of this story there? He said, let me talk about Hezekiah. I said, spell that for me. He said, Mr. Snow, don't make me a jackass today, you know. Solomon was the Paku, not me. Don't do that. I said, okay, fine. I said, pronounce it again. He said, Hezekiah. I said, so tell me about this guy. He said, well, Hezekiah was one of the last great kings of Israel. I said, I said, what made him great? He said, Hezekiah aimed to be a servant of God and to remove idolatry, remove all of these things from the kingdom of Jerusalem and move it away from the Israelites who were so easily fooled into worshiping other gods, so on and so forth, right? And he said, imagine, they praying to all sorts of different things, and still somehow, I get them blamed for their idols. He said, listen man, my name is Satan the devil. My name is Buddha. My name is Ashram. My name is freaking Ram. My name is Osiris. My name is not. My name is Satan the devil. So if the man go tearing down idol left and right, how come people even associate me with idol? You ever see a picture of me yet that is accurately drawn? Show me the jackass who say he see me. Show me the what? I said, bye, you know what, you're probably right. I said, but you're here now. He's like, yeah, but I'm not here physically. I'm talking to you in your brain. This way now, in case anybody question anything, I'll label you as insane and they're going to lock you up. And they can say, this is a madman too, and story done. I said, bye, you know what? You're serious, you know. You're real? He said, yeah. I watching everybody who watching you right now. And I know who think you're a madman, and I know who realize that you're telling the truth, or you're talking the story from a different perspective to open up their eyes. He said, but Hezekiah, I like the guy. I said, why you say that? He said, well, he tore down all the idols, he tear down everything. He started to put God's name back first inside the community. And then blam! As soon as he was gone, maybe a couple years afterwards, the people start going back into lawlessness. He said, Hezekiah made a big, big mistake. I said, what was that? He said he built it back good, but he never put a system of maintenance in place to maintain a standard. I said, oh, Scott, bye. Now you sound like a businessman. He said, life is a business to God and me. When you're dead and your soul's gone, God to stick to and give me one. It's an unfair business. I'll jump back. I said, so who gonna take me when I dead, Satan? He said, it depends on what happens at the end of this story. I said, oh, Scott, I worry no. I worry no. Right? So we got we talk, and then he continues. He said, but he liked Hezekiah. Hezekiah was a strong-minded, faithful king. He didn't entertain too much of the lawlessness that David and Solomon and all them, even though he come from the genetic line, he said one of us got to erase the badness of the past, make amends and go forward. So he said, all right. Said he had a certain degree, a sense that the rest didn't have. And he exercised and lived his life according to his faith. And that is why I say he was one of the last of the great kings of Israel. He was one of the more honest ones. That didn't have to swar you or outsmart you or rewrite history. He kind of did it his way. So I said, all right. I said, so let's see how all of these things going to work out. And let's see where you're going with this. He said, but the people themselves, after Hezekiah fixed the system for them, the people themselves proved to be wicked, and they gone back to doing their own set of scum. And they say, Hezekiah, you was a paku. You dead now. You gone. Me ain't got time with you. He said, and that triggered something. He said at that point in time, he said, man, God started getting vexed with these people real bad. God keeps saying, by everybody I said, and you keep doing skunt. God said, you know what? I can draw back from you for a minute. And he said, well, you know, up until this particular point in time, the only other time I really see God draw back from these people was Moses' days. He said, all right. He said, but what they did there, by losing God's favors, by being a bunch of dishonest and disloyal pakus, he said God decided, you know what? Teach them a lesson. And boom, here comes Babylon the Great. Here comes the Babylonian Empire. Ladies and gentlemen, this is where these stories start to get a little bit more different. So Babylon ended up coming, destroying the place, broke down the temple, do everything they gotta do, take it all over, take the Israelites into captivity, allowed some of them to stay in certain areas who wanted to be governors, who wanted, you know, basically the sellouts. They kept reigning over things, and the people who were very faithful, they had to punish bad, and the rest just basically punished as a consequence of their own stupid decisions. Right? He said, instead of them building idols with their metal and their copper and their bronze, he said they should have been doing what Babylon was doing and making spears and shields and sword, because it was a warish place that he living in. And once you disrespect your God, well then you need to pick up your arms. So they disrespect their God back away from them, and they did not learn how to defend themselves properly. So all them fighting story, did he pick it up, but we got God behind we? As soon as God dropped back, God done send message to them, hey, I left them jackass them for a good 400 to 500 years. Y'all do what y'all gotta do. And then the devil said, and once again, Mr. Snow, I was blamed. I said, what do you mean you were blamed? You didn't do that to them, Babylon did. He said, Mr. Snow, you ain't understand. These people so wicked, they realize that all the punishment they went through was a consequence of their decisions. So when Babylon took over now and started joke up some of them, start chop up the rest, start rape the women, start do all of this and enslave them, they say, the devil made my life hard. No. Mr. Snow, remember what I told you from Noah's story? I said, what was that? He said, if Noah and his family were the only ones that survived, and they repopulated the earth, then the reality is, based on the story in the Bible, the Babylonians are also related to the Israelites. Because all of them would have came as a product from Noah and his family. He said, so Mr. Snow, This wasn't a story. This wasn't a story about an enemy fighting and taking over anything. He's like, this was a story about cousins and distant relatives fighting each other for power and greed and taking over each other, badaing each other women, badaing everything for each other, and fighting and warring and killing each other for take it. That is what is going on here. But yet, Mr. Snow, they blame me for their punishment. But this is not their own family who has enslaved them, who have punished them, who have put them through it. The same way they've been putting others through it as well. Are we not all part of one family? I said, oh, skunt, Mike. He said, Mr. Snow, the only problem was back then he didn't have this matchdna.com thing. He said he lucky they got it now. He said, lucky we got it now. He said, but back then them didn't know all of them is same family. They feel because they spoke different language that they were not family. Well, hell, Mr. Snow, if he said I speak English, but if I make a child and my child grows up in Cuba, my child will speak Spanish. It doesn't mean it's not my child. My child may not even recognize me if we're distant for so long, much less generations and decades and centuries and millenniums pass by, where all of these people are growing in their own respective right within a culture that they have created from scratch for themselves as no knowledge to their own self. He said, Mr. Snow, once again, they start saying that the devil is bad because they were dying. But they didn't look to see, is their own family killing them? He said all of this was a further part of the curse that fell upon David. This was a curse that came ever since Adam choose to keep the woman who liked the snake and come out of the garden. When Adam could have left the woman there, put you out the garden. Adam didn't have enough faith in his God. Or he would have known God would have destroyed that one and give you a better one. But Adam look at that one and say, does Scott look better than a goat? I gotta keep that. And that was the problem. I see a question here. Lynette Singh. But I don't understand why the faithful people have to pay for the wicked ones. Oh, it is simple. And that is because none of us are truly faithful. Because inaction in itself is also an action. It is the action of choosing not to be active. At least that's how the devil explained it. As he doesn't say, you can play good how you want to play good, but if you watching them hurting each other and you don't stand up and say, hey, that's wrong, guess what happened? You just as wicked as the rest of them. It's only you ain't get you time yet. Who you really faithful to? Not to yourself. You don't talk because you don't want to be attacked. That is selfishness. Because at the same time, you see other children of God being attacked. But if you are faithful, then you will stand up no matter how much the odds seem against you, and you will say, it is time to get the job done. Faith without action means nothing. Faith is all about action. Right? And this is what the devil explains. The devil said he is more faithful than anybody else who claim and come and claim to be faithful. I said, why would you say that? You don't serve God, you serve yourself. He says, jackass, if God is all-knowing, He could tell the future, he could tell the past. Then God know he created me for a purpose. I am not the enemy. I am the one that was made to take the bad name. I will eventually be the judge. I said, oh, Scott, that don't sound right. He said, to this day, everything they ever said about me is hearsay. Not 1 ounce of valid proof can anybody provide, Mr. Snow, to say that the devil actually had hands in all of this. He said, all you have is a bunch of memos from a set of sinful people who have already disrespected the very same God that they claim to be faithful to, and now they're blaming me so that society does not look at them for the pacus that they really are. I said, well, oh, Scott, this thing really making sense here, you know. Well, right now I start questioning myself. I said, bye. I wonder, is what nonsense I've been doing? Have I been doing enough to prove that I'm faithful? How can you be faithful and be scared if you have faith in an all-powerful God? I have faith in my God. That is why I can bravely go and get certain things done. Despite how much adversity may face me. Faith is action. The devil says. Those who said they were faithful, their actions have left them in shortcomings. So Lynette Singh, I hope that can answer that question. Right? Because at the end of the day, faith is action, my dear. And inaction is the action of not being active or choosing not to be active. Which still comes back down to free will. Right? So do not be fooled. For all have fallen short of the glory of God. So we still safe there. Right? Unless the devil just come and tell me something different there, then I gotta watch it a little bit. What's the? Oh, okay, good. All have fallen short of the glory of God. We safe. Right? He said Jesus come and fix the story. Right? So anyway, they end up in Babylon. Right? Oh, by the way, this is gonna get real interesting. Because he said, man, Mr. Snow, I walk through Guyana every day. I just go to my house in Parliament, I just kick back, I just rock back on the table them and watch all the dunces speak. I wonder how come the people don't figure out what really going on. But it's my little bit of entertainment. He said, but Mr. Snow, he said, what is currently happening in your country is no different than what has been happening throughout history. There's nothing new under the sun. It is normal. By why he's saying that? He said human beings shall manage human beings to their own destruction. Watch it carefully, Mr. Snow. I ain't lying to you. I ain't got nothing for gain or lose from you. Listen carefully. So I said, alright. Going. He said, watch how stupid the people is in Guyana. I said, what you mean? I said, plenty of them cussing Chinese. They costing the Chinese man investment. They costing this. They costing that. They putting all this thing out there. Chinese man want to take over country. They want to do this and want to do that. But let me tell you a secret about these people from Asia. I said, go along and tell me, no. He said, when the people of God were held captive in Babylon, he said, it's Chinese people come and set them free. I said, no. He said, Anthony, the Persians were of Asian descent. I said, wait 1 minute. A little stupidity today. Pull out this paper. I just start draw a world map, okay? You got US looking like shit here. You got a thing here. You got Europe, okay? You got Africa. You got India. Right? You got China. Good. So he said, all this piece here, all of this was Asia. This was Persian territory. Right? And the Chinese were smart to start conquering. Fast, fast, fast. He said, and it was hard for them to beat the Chinese at that time. I said, why? He said, because everything was made in China. I said, what are you telling me? He said, listen, who else can manufacture so many arrows on a daily basis that when just a few of them start shoot up in the air, so much arrow it can blast out the sun? He said it happened to a lot more than just 300 people, but the history is mixed up. You gotta watch carefully. He said it's only Chinese gonna mass produce and manufacture arrow and bow and things so fast. He said, and that's how come China started manufacturing in the first place. They realized you gotta manufacture plenty if you want to rule the world. You gotta make cost of goods cheaper for your people. You gotta find out how to bring cost of living down. You know, so they were working on that from way back when. Right? He said, and then the Chinese were not as restrictive. The Chinese said, you want to eat pork, eat pork. You want to eat cow, eat cow. You want to eat catty. But don't eat ling fu catty, because ling fu catty still got lo mein in it. So don't eat the catty. You got to leave eat catty alone. Right? So we said, all right, good. But it's the Chinese that eventually come through Darius the Great and ended up taking over Babylon. And some of you may know the story. He said that was one place. He said that was one place and one time in history he ever get a hand. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, bye. I be chilling inside a banquet all the night. King of Babylon, everybody, they bringing out all the fine china and thing. All the gold goblets and, you know, a big shot show, you know. It's like president, prime minister, everybody in the movement there. Right? So, he said, of course, I'm going to be there too, as well. All the action they happen in the night, right? That's a big show. Main event. He said, so I have to be there in Babylon that night. That was a must. That was a can't miss event. He said, Mr. Snow, but I knew something they didn't know. I said, what was that? He said, I know that the Persians weren't going to miss that event either that night. So same time I enjoy and I get in a lash off. I see them stupid enough to bring out God fighting China, and God get more vexed now. God says, what these jackass them doing with me fighting China? So God decided to give me a hand tonight. And a hand he did provide. Out of nowhere, the hand of God come. And with the finger, he start right on the wall. Go suck your mama. I mean, mene, takilal. That's what he said. The other part came later in life. Right? And this is the funniness about it. They couldn't figure out what the writing mean. So they go and they send for a man that they throw inside a lion pit before. He said, I found this one very hilarious. Right? Because they call a man named Daniel that they put inside a lion den to come and interpret for them what this writing to say. Right? But little did they know that all God did was write, COVID lockdown start at 11 o'clock, get your gone home by 6 in the morning. But no, Daniel had more fun. Daniel said, I remember when you put me in the lion den. This one I can do for you today is going to be a magical one. He said, it says, many, takilal. You have been weighed, you have been measured, and you have been found wanting. Left them stupidity for a minute. They says, what do we want? And we got everything. He says, licks you want, and it's licks you're going to get. Hold on, give it till morning. On the way out, Daniel give the guard a nice bottle of Grey Goose. Little did we know, it was actually a goose with some spit inside of it, but the guard drink it nonetheless. It was great. That's what happened when you buy mock thing. Right? Anyway, the guard drink the mock thing. And the guard fall asleep. And he gone. Boom! The Persians come in. Gate left open, everything. Imagine being bent over drunk with your pants half and bombsy up in the air. That is what happened that night to Babylon. And Chinese man were Chinese man opportunists. They see easy riding. So they come and they take it. And that was the end of Babylon. Realistically speaking. Realistically speaking. That was the end of Babylon. Right? After that point of time, Babylon became a territory of Persia. Until Alexander the Great, who was a homosexual, bisexual, Batiman and thing, right? He said, watch how God make it funny. He let the chosen be conquered by his cousin. Then he let the greedy cousin be conquered by the opportunistic manufacturer. And when the manufacturer they get it too big, he sent a bisexual for go and conquer them. He said, Mr. Snow, you gotta read this thing good if you're studying this thing, you know. Because I've been there for see what is going on. I said, bye. I said, I never, ever, ever hear the Bible like this in me life yet. I said, so what was your role in all of this? He said, bye. Me role was the same role that I think God created me for. Take all the bad name wrongfully. And one day I get to meet all of my accusers and I get to judge them. I said, Bible, at least I know if I make a mistake, it's me fault. I ain't blaming you. You sound too ready for judge we. He said, don't worry, I'm waiting for plenty of them. But let me go on. I got to deal with this court story first before we get to the judgment and you know, the sentencing and thing like that. So I said, all right, good, we're going to continue going. Right? Now, no, I'm incorrect. I believe it was Cyrus the Great, not Darius. It was Cyrus the Great that conquered Babylon. And then Darius came, and Darius was the one that actually freed the Jews to allow them to practice their religion and do their thing, because Chinese man them don't really give a damn about anything. Once business running, Chinese man good, right? Good. All right. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to stop there for today, right? And as we move forward into the next part of the Devil's Attorney, which will be part 3, we shall be starting from the beginning of the New Testament when baby Jesus arrives. Okay? Stay tuned. I hope you guys enjoyed today's show. I hope you enjoyed the storyline. Remember, I do have faith in my God, right? I don't have faith in the devil, okay? But at the same time, my God is a fair God. He's a just God. And you cannot be fair and just unless you listen to all sides of the story. And in a just world, every man has the right to state his side of the story and also face his accusers. For those of you who have been blaming the devil, let me send you a message. You keep saying this. He said, don't worry. You time and he time gonna come real soon. So keep blaming the wrongfully. You're gonna end up in he hand. Right? Because you can lie to people, but you can't lie to God. No matter how much you rewrite story, how powerful you get, he waited for you. Especially those of you who have been wicked and blaming him wrongfully. He got his own load for carry. We need to start taking responsibility for our decisions. Right? So we will continue this story as time permits, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, I hope that it was enjoyable. I hope that you've learned some lessons from this story. I hope that you keep an open mind and you understand the real reason for doing this story. Because if you want to live in a world that is fear, if you want to live in a world that is fear, then you yourself must be a fear person. Thank you very much. We will continue. We will continue this story as the time permits. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Have a blessed day. God bless all of you. Remember, at the end of the day, I think one of the biggest things we learned from here is that faith is an action. And if we choose to be inactive, then we are not being faithful. The catch is, we got to learn how to do it so that we are not endangering, compromising, or adding more insult to injury in a system that is already broken and written and documented and modeled after a true system of wickedness. We need to do better. Thank you guys very, very much. Right? The devil has left the building. Right? He's off to go and visit some politicians this morning and some pastors. Yeah. He says he really enjoys dealing with hypocrites, so he's going to be paying some visits this morning. Okay? In the meantime, you guys have a good time. It's, it's Saturday, a lot going on, work going on all over, right? And I look forward to see you guys on our next stream. Please, this video will come off shortly and be uploaded to our YouTube channel, right? We're looking to get at least 1,000 subscribers on our YouTube so that we can actually earn something for being on these streams. So it doesn't cost you anything to subscribe. So if you're really, a supporter, or you want to help without even investing a cent, that is definitely a way to help, and it doesn't cost you anything. Click like, click subscribe, share, post your comments, post your thoughts. If you wanted the devil's opinion from anything in the Old Testament that we would have already went through, please put it in the comment section. I'll send a notice to him, and as time permits for him, he'll answer it. Okay? Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. You guys have a great day. Bye-bye.